This beauty of a book is a 1948 encyclopedia, a fascinating snapshot of the essential knowledge of its time. Imagine this, it's Google before the internet, a whole world of information bound in a single elegant crafted volume. With its striking red cloth and marble paper binding, this encyclopedia was once a proud symbol of learning, but time has taken its toll. The spine is damaged, and several pages, especially the foldouts, are torn. You might wonder, why save an encyclopedia with outdated content? And that's precisely why it matters. Preserving this book means preserving a window into the past, a resource that helps us understand where we've come from, so we can better prepare for the future. I'm committed to giving this remarkable piece of history the care it deserves. I start out by cleaning the book. First, with a soft brush, I brush away the dirt that has accumulated between the pages. When it comes to dirt, books have both advantages and disadvantages. When a book is closed, its pages are well protected from the world's dust and grime. But if something gets in between the pages while it's open and doesn't get removed, you can be sure it will stay there. That's why you can brush out all sorts of strange things from a book, even when the pages aren't actually very dirty. On the outside, the book is also cleaned with a smoke sponge. Here, it's much more exposed and dirt can accumulate in much larger quantities. As I'm cleaning the book, I'm also removing the tape that's been applied to hold the spine together. Fortunately, I can just peel the tape off. It's not too deteriorated. The adhesive is starting to give a bit, but it's not bad yet. I would estimate that it was probably put on within the last couple of years, but it doesn't seem to have made a big difference for the binding. The pages inside the book are stabilized with Japanese koso paper and wheat starch paste. Just as the structure of the book protects the pages from dirt, it also does a good job of protecting against wear and damage. However, there are still a few tears and creases that need to be repaired and stabilized, but fortunately there aren't too many considering the number of pages. The stabilized tears are left to dry in a sandwich, meaning I place a piece of non-worn polyester and a piece of blotter paper on each side to ensure they dry without the pages sticking together. Initially, I stabilized all tears from both sides. This is the standard when working with documents as it provides greater strength, and the koso paper I'm using is transparent enough to read through. However, after working a few hundred pages into the book, I noticed that the multiple layers of koso paper began to increase the book's thickness in areas where there were many repairs, which is impractical as it causes the book to be thicker in some parts than others. So I switched to stabilizing the damages from just one side. This is still enough to repair the tears if the pages are handled carefully, but it avoids having too many layers of paper inside the book. The excess paper on all the repairs is trimmed with a sharp scalpel. By placing a small piece of cardboard between the pages, I have a surface to cut on without accidentally cutting into the underlying pages. I can try looking up the word cardboard in our encyclopedia. Now, the book is in Danish, so I'll look for the word pap. Here, pap is described as materiale fremstillet af grov papirmasse eller ved sammenklæbning af papirark, tykkelse over en halv millimeter. And that actually fits quite well with the piece of cardboard I'm using here. I need to replace the part of the hollow back that's missing. I do this by finding a piece of acid-free cardboard, which I first cut to size and then thin out at the end that will be attached to the original hollow back. It isn't because the cardboard is very thick, but if I don't thin it at this end, there will be a very noticeable transition between the two pieces, which I don't want. The original hollow back is slightly split, so I decide to separate it further and place the filling inside the original material. Cardboard can absorb a lot of wheat starch paste, so I first apply a layer in the split of the original hollow back and letting it soak a bit while I coat the filling with paste. After placing the filling material, I also add more paste between the cardboard layers to ensure they are thoroughly saturated. I'm working with quite a large amount of paste here, so I've also made sure to place a layer of nonwoven polyester under the hollow back to prevent it from sticking to the spine. For drying, I add a layer of nonwoven polyester and blotter paper on top along with a weight bag. The weight bag conforms to the curvature of the spine, ensuring that the hollow back doesn't deform as it dries. I'm also adding a cord to the end bands to give them some extra strength. By making a few small holes in the covers, I can glue my cord into them and they are left to dry with clamps for a very long time. It's important they're completely dry, otherwise they'll just come loose when I continue my work. The end bands are very exposed areas, especially when the book is as heavy as this one. The tail band gets worn against the shelf it stands on when the book is moved, and the headband often bears the brunt when the book is pulled off a shelf, as it's easy to grab onto. I should note here that this is not the correct way to remove books from shelves, but we'll save that lesson for another time. The cords help preventing this kind of wear from affecting only the binding material. The binding material on the spine is filled with new cloth. The cloth is coated with wheat starch paste, placed between the hollow back and the original binding material, and gently pushed into position. Once the cloth is aligned on the spine, it's wrapped around the covers, the new hollow back, and the cord. I place nonwoven polyester in all areas where there's a risk of sticking the wrong parts together. I also apply a layer of paste over the cloth and attach the original binding material on top of the new material, allowing it to dry with clamps on the sides and a weight on the spine. There's not much material missing at the tail band, but it still needs to be filled. Because there's not much missing, it's also a bit tricky to get the filling material into place, since it has to be maneuvered underneath the existing material. The cloth I place here is dry when positioned, simply because it's easier to handle than when it's coated with paste. Once both pieces are in place, I apply paste between the layers of binding material, making sure there's enough to penetrate the layers and adhere them together. I'm not adding any filling material to the paper binding, but instead consolidating any loose material with a small amount of wheat starch paste. We can try looking up bookbinding in the Encyclopedia as well. I found the word bogbind, and it is described as oldtidens pergamentkodekser beskyttes af skinfoderaler eller kasser, og først i middelalderen indbandt man håndskrifter i skinbetrukne træplader med metalbeslag, ofte kostbart smykket. Fra 15. århundrede blev bogbinderiet et selvstændigt håndværk, papbind indføres i Italien og ligeledes forgyldning. Fra 17. århundrede stilles bøgerne med ryggen udad, og titel og forgyldning anbringes på ryggen, modsat tidligere på forreste snit. I 18. århundrede indføres papirbindene. I'm consolidating loose parts of the end papers with wheat starch paste, so they won't be lost in the future. I simply apply the paste and let it dry under pressure. After drying, however, I find the result unsatisfactory, so I decide to repeat the process. Additionally, I stabilize the joints with a piece of Japanese koso paper, which helps to secure the end papers. Once it's fully dry, the Japanese paper is trimmed just as was done with the tears in the text block. Last but not least, the fills need to be retouched. I perform the retouching with watercolor. When working with watercolors, however, it's important to remember that they dry lighter than they appear when first applied, and that they are partly transparent, meaning the white color of the cloth can partially show through. So the retouching needs to be done in layers, gradually as it becomes clear what the previous layers will look like. I found the description of retouching too. I can't find the verb to retouch, but I found the word retouche. It says that the word comes from French and means to touch again, and it is described as fjernelse af pletter og ujævnheder i et fotografisk billede gennem pensling med et dertil egnet farvestof. This description is obviously in relation to photographs, but it's the same principles I'm using when retouching a book. I found the description of watercolor as well. I'm looking at the word vandfarve, and it is described as farver udrevet med vand, modsat olie- og lakfarver, anvendes til akvarelmaleri. Short and precise. As we reach the end of this conservation journey, this 1948 encyclopedia stands renewed, ready to tell its story for years to come. What was once a worn and vulnerable book is now stabilized and strengthened, each repair carefully crafted to bring it back to life, layer by layer. Every piece of this conservation has not just preserved the pages, but has restored a tangible connection to the past, a preserved piece of history that holds within it the knowledge and worldview of an earlier time. Now, when someone picks up this volume, they'll not only encounter the wealth of information printed on its pages, but will also feel the presence of the countless hands that have opened it before. The journey is taken through time, and the meticulous care that's gone into safeguarding it. It's a reminder of the value of preserving even those pieces that may seem outdated, because each one tells us something about where we've come from and where we may be going.